Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we are learning Maseches Bava Kama, Daf Vav, and we're starting 4 lines from the bottom of the page on Chav Hamid base at the last of the short lines. If you'll recall from yesterday, we were discussing a discussion about Shein and Regel versus Karen and Tam, as it relates to Reshus Harabim and Reshus Hanizak. This was the copy that I shared with you digitally. Let's review, because we're going to be making various potential kal v'chomers from this. So starting with Shein v'regel, we hold that Shein v'regel and Reshus Harabim, if an animal eats a food that's in Reshus Harabim, or if it steps on a kli b'Reshus Harabim, the halacha is that the baal of that animal is pater. However, if he's b'Reshus Hanizak and the animal eats the fruit that's in the Reshus Hanizak, or if he damages in the Reshus Hanizak by walking, the din is that he's going to be chayav nezek shalim. And then we move on to Karen. A Karen in this case is we're talking about an animal that's docile and calm. So an animal that's docile and calm that does damages, as we've learned, is chatzi nezek. However, when it comes to the Karen doing damage, B'Reshus Hanizak, that's a machlokes tanaim, as we saw yesterday, between Rabbi Tarfon, who holds that the chiyuv is nezek shalim, and the Chachamim, who hold that the punishment here is only chatzi nezek. Yesterday, we had a complex conversation about the scope and latitude of different kal v'chomers, and what we're going to do now is analyze a few different potential kal v'chomers that maybe could have been. Here we go. Chav Hei Amud Beis, 4 lines from the bottom. V'tehei, perhaps we should say that Shein v'regel chayav b'Reshus harabim mikal v'chomer. Maybe we should have said that Shein v'regel really is chayav b'Reshus harabim from a kal v'chomer. What had we said? We said that Shein v'regel is pater b'Reshus harabim. So the Gemara wants to say that perhaps we should say that we're chayav. What is the kal v'chomer that would indicate that really Shein v'regel b'Reshus harabim should be pater? The Gemara says, Uma Keren, when we look at the world of Keren, Shebirshus Hanizak, Eino Mashalam Elachati Nezek, and Birshus Harabim Chayeves. In the world of Keren, according to the Chachamim, this kasha is against the Chachamim. In the world of Keren, we see that Birshus Hanizak, the Chachamim hold Chati Nezek, and Birshus Harabim it's Chati Nezek. Then, Shein v'regel shebirshus hanizak mishalem nezek shalem eino din shebirshus harabim chayiv. Meaning, if Keren Tam is chayiv both in Reshus Hanizak and Reshus Harabim, then why would it be that if Shein v'regel has a higher punishment in Reshus Hanizak, which is nezek shalem, shouldn't it be that Reshus Harabim also is chayiv nezek shalem? The Gemara says no. Last line of Chav Hei Amud Beis, Amar Kra uvi'er bistei acher v'lo b'Reshus Harabim. No, the din is specifically by Shein and Regel that the only time that there's going to be a chiyuv by the Shein and Regel is when the animal is in Reshus Hanizak. However, v'lo b'Reshus Harabim, if in fact there were to have been damages only in Reshus Harabim, the din is that Shein and Regel will be pater b'Reshus Harabim. Says the Gemara, I think you misunderstood. I didn't mean to say that Shein and Regel, B'Reshus Harabim, should be chayav nezek shalem. Midi kule ka'amrinan. I didn't mean to say that it should be kule, that it should be full damages. Maybe just palga ka'amrinan. Maybe the kal v'chomer was coming to teach me that really Shein v'Regel, B'Reshus Harabim should be chayav chatzi nezek, and it shouldn't be pater from the kal v'chomer that we stated on the bottom of Chav Hei Amud Beis. So this, the Gemara says, no dice. Chav Vav Amud Aleph, top line, last word on the line. That when do we say that we have chatzu es kaspo, half of the monies are being given out, namely chatzi nezek? That's only true by the world of Keren. The only time we have a chatzi nezek payment, says the Gemara, is by the world of Keren, but never by the world of Shein. By the world of Shein, it's either, as we have it in our chart, pater b'Reshus harabim, or chayav nezek shalim b'Reshus hanizak. But there is no reality of Shein v'Regel that's going to be chayiv chatzi nezek. So then the Gemara recommends potentially another kal v'chomer. Perhaps we should say, v'lo tehei Shein v'Regel chayiv es b'Reshus hanizak el chatzi nezek mikal v'chomer mikeren. In the box of Shein v'Regel b'Reshus hanizak, we had said over here that you're chayiv nezek shalim. So the Gemara says, no. Maybe you're not chayav nezek shalim, and here's the kal v'chomer as to why you would not be chayav nezek shalim. 4 lines down. Uma Keren shebirshus harabim, just like Keren and Reshus harabim, that just like Karen B'Rshus HaRabim, which is Pater, so it's Chayeves B'Rshus HaNizak, but only Chati Nezek according to the Chachamim. Then maybe we should have said that Shein B'Regel Sheb'Rshus HaRabim Petura, Eino Din Sheb'Rshus HaNizak Mishalim Chati Nezek. So the Gemara makes a different Kal V'chomer, pushing in the direction that we should be able to prove from our chart that perhaps Shein B'Regel B'Rshus HaNizak should not be Nezek Shalem, but should only be Chati Nezek. The Gemara rejects this too. Amar Kra Yishalem Tashlumin Ma'alya. That when we talk about Shein B'Regel B'Rshus HaNizak, we're not talking about Chati Nezek. We're talking about Tashlumin Ma'alya, the highest level of payment. And the highest level of payment is Nezek Shalem. The Gemara tries again with a different Kal V'chomer. Maybe we should say V'lo tehei Karen B'Rshus HaRabim Chayev Mikal V'chomer. Maybe we should not have Karen B'Rshus HaRabim to be Chayev at all. Maybe it should be Pater entirely. Why? Because we're about 12 lines down. Umashein v'regel shebirshus hanizak mishalim birshus harabim petura. When we look at the row of shein v'regel, that's pater birshus harabim and chayiv and nezek shalem. So then keren shebirshus hanizak, which according to the chachamim is chati nezek, eino din shebirshus harabim petura. Meaning just like in the top row, where we drop from nezek shalem to pater by shein v'regel. So then, shouldn't we drop according to the Chachamim from Chati Nezek to 0 and not to Chati Nezek? That's what the Gemara wants to say is the Kal V'chomer. And the Gemara says no. Amar of Yochanan, Amar Kra Yechetzun. Ein Chati Nezek Chaluk. Lo Birshus HaRabim v'lo Birshus HaYachid. The Gemara says that in the world of Keren, there is no difference as to where the damage takes place according to the Chachamim. The Keren could be standing in the middle of Birshus HaRabim. He could be standing Birshus HaNizak. We don't care. Keren is always going to be Chayev Chati Nezek, no matter its location. Let's try what will be our fourth possible Kal V'chomer today that we're going to reject. The Gemara says a quarter of the way down. Perhaps we should say, V'yehei Adam, when a man is involved in injuring somebody else, maybe we should say that he's Chayev B'kofer Mikal V'chomer. Maybe we should say he's Chayev Kofer. Normally, the way that it works is if a shiur kills an Adam, so then there is going to be a payment of kofer. But here says the Gemara, perhaps we should say that when one man kills another man, that there's also a chiv kofer. Where does this come from? Not directly from the machlokes that we have here on this piece of paper, but instead from another place. That when a shiur kills someone, so then, or I should say, if he damages someone but doesn't kill him, the Baal Hashor will be Chayev Arba Dvarim and will have to pay Kofer. Adam, if a man who is Chayev Arba Dvarim, Shechayev Arba Dvarim, Eino Din Shechayev Kofer. So the Gemara says that perhaps we can make this Kal V'chomer to teach us that if one Adam kills another Adam, then the din is that he should be Chayev Kofer for that murder. To this, the Gemara says no. Amar Kra, Kechol Asher Yushas Alav, Alav V'lo Al Adam. When is it that we have a din of Kofer? That's only true when an animal is involved. But when it's only two people involved, there is no din of kofer. Let's try our fifth Kal V'chomer of the day that we're going to reject, 1/3 of the way down. Perhaps we should say the reverse of what we just said. Perhaps we should say, V'yehei shor chayev v'arba dvarim mikal v'chomer. Perhaps when a shiur damages, that it should be chayev in arba dvarim, tsar, ripui, boshes, all of those. Says the Gemara, why? Because Uma Adam she'eno chayev b'kofer chayev b'arba dvarim. This is the exact opposite Kal V'chomer that we just made. Just like a human being who is not chayev in kofer is chayev in arba dvarim. Shor shechayev b'kofer, a shiur that when it kills a person, the Baal HaShor is chayev kofer. Eino din sheyehei chayev b'arba dvarim. All the more so that that animal should be chayev in arba dvarim, or at least his Baal should. Says the Gemara here too. Nope, that's not happening. Amar Kra, ish be'amiso, below shor be'amiso. Never do we have a din of arba dvarim, of the 4 payments that come from an animal damaging a person. That's only true with people. The Gemara says just about halfway down, asks a kasha. Terrible scenario. We're going to learn a couple of very graphic scenarios tonight. I apologize. I didn't write the shas, but these are very graphic and unfortunate cases. And this is the lighter of the 2 graphic cases that we're going to see. Ibayalahu. Regel, let's say that an animal is walking in Rishus Harabim. Shadarsa al gabe tinok b'chatzer hanizak. I should not Rishus Harabim. An animal is walking, and unfortunately it steps on a child while it's B'Rishus hanizak. Mahu sheteshalem kofer. What is the din on the baal of the animal, who, while that animal was in Rishus hanizak, stepped on and killed a child? Mi amrinan midi dehave akeren. Do we treat it like a regular case of keren? And the Gemara says over here, keren kevan to avad trevetz lasa zimne orchehum shalim kofer. Once an animal has established itself as a muad, then it would be chayev in kofer. Hachanami loshna. So too in this case over here, where an animal in Rishus hanizak steps on and Nebuch kills a child, the baal of that animal will be chayev kofer. O dilma, or perhaps would we say keren kavanah solahazik, hai ein kavanah solahazik. Or perhaps would we say that keren requires intent when we are dealing with keren hamuad, when we're dealing with an animal that's considered muad, that requires intent. And hai ein kavanah solahazik. Remember that cows can't see their back legs. They can't see their front legs, most likely. They certainly can't see their back legs. They don't know what they're stepping on. So Rahman al-Islan, if an animal steps on a child, should there be kofer? Yes or no? So the Gemara attempts an answer. Tashma. The Gemara says, if a man brings his shore into a homeowner, Birshus Hanizak, and he did so shelo birshus, without permission, and and while this animal had entered into the Rishus Hanizak without permission, it killed the owner of that property. It killed the owner of the Nizak himself. Hashor beskila uve alav. The shore is going to be killed. Uve alav, and its owner. Bain tam, bain muad meshalem kofer shalem divrei Reb Tarfon. He's going to pay kofer shalem, not chatzi kofer, kofer shalem. So it seems from our Gemara that we have a very clear answer to our question. We had asked about a baby. If, God forbid, a child was stepped on by an animal, Birshus Hanizak, would we say that the Bailam have to pay kofer, yes or no? So the Gemara responds, seemingly, yes, they would have to pay kofer shalem. Says the Gemara, 2/3 of the way down, kofer shalem betam le Rabbi Tarfon minale. How do we know that if there is a kofer, shalem in regards to this animal, how do we know that this is the case that Rabbi Tarfon holds this way? Lab mishum, isn't this because the savar la Rabbi Yossi Haglili? Perhaps he holds a Rabbi Yossi Haglili coupled with a kal v'chomer. To Amar, Rabbi Yossi Haglili says as follows: Tam mishalem chatzi kofer birshus harabim. Typically, a keren tam, this is what we've spoken about 10 times in the chart over here. The keren tam birshus harabim is chayev chatzi nezik. So says the Gemara, "Da'amar tam mishalem chatzi kofer birshus harabim." If an animal kills a person, he'd be obligated to pay chatzi kofer. U'maisi la mikal v'chomer deregel alma ika kofer beregel. And we bring a kal v'chomer from our case to the world, from our case of regel. And what do we see? Alma ika kofer beregel, that we have a case of kofer even in our case of regel. That was our question. We said regel shadarsa al gabe tinok b'chatzar anizak ma'u shetashalem kofer, and we see a black on white answer, which seems to belong to Rabbi Tarfon, that holds that there is kofer shalem in the Rishus Hanizak if the animal kills Nebuch, a little child. The Gemara says, perhaps you've learned things wrong. And we're going to see 5 different iterations of how to learn this. Amar of Simi min harda. No, you've learned it wrong. We're not learning from regel in order to teach us the din of kofer, but rather, says the Gemara, perhaps we're learning tana min nizakin de regel. We're learning about nizakin de regel, damages, not murder, ma'isila. Maybe that's where we learn kofer from. Says the Gemara, we cannot do that because v'lifroch, we could argue mal nizakin de regel shekain yeshnan be'esh, that in regards to the world of nizakin de regel, that if an animal causes damage with its regel in regards to eish, so there is no kofer in that case. So therefore, you cannot learn from that case of nizakin beregel. The Gemara says perhaps we can learn about the din of kofer, not like we tried to learn from the world of regel, but perhaps mitamun. Perhaps we can learn about it from an item that's hidden away in a bale of hay. Says the Gemara, we can't do that either. Malatamun shekain yeshnon bebor, because the din of kofer in that case of bor is different than our case, and therefore we cannot learn from there. Says the Gemara, perhaps Kalim, we can learn from the damages of Kalim. Says the Gemara, that can't be either. Kalim sheyeshnon be'esh. The halachos are different in regards to Eish, that there is no kofar over there. So we cannot learn from back to our case about kofar. Then the Gemara says, Kalim tmunim. Maybe Kalim tmunim are different than, let's say, a random item that's tamun, an actual kli is tamun. Says the Gemara, no, that too is rejected. Kalim tmunim sheyeshnon be'adam. There is a different case scenario, a different halachic scenario of kofar in regards to an adam who causes those damages. Elolav, therefore, the Gemara returns back to where we started and teaches us that we do, in fact, learn the din of kofar from to the case of regel. Shma minami kofar de regel ma'asila. It's the kal v'chomer that we started with by Rabbi Tarfon. That we had asked, how does Rabbi Tarfon know that there's a din of kofar shalem? He learns it from the case of Karen with the kal v'chomer from regel. That's why the Gemara says over here, 3/4 of the way down, 12 lines from the bottom, Elolav shma minami kofar de regel ma'asila. Rabbi Tarfon really does learn it from the world of regel. Al meika kofar beregel. Shmamino. And therefore the Gemara concludes, we had asked a question in the middle of the page that if God forbid an animal steps on a tinok in the chatzar hanizak, what's the din? The din is that he's chayev kofar shalem. But maybe it's just a regular case of tam. It could be a case of tam, but we make a kal v'chomer in this case to add it to the case of regel. And therefore, by the case of regel, where the regel is dores al hatinok and kills the child, the halacha is that he's chayev kofar shalem. The Gemara says 5 or 6 lines before the last mission on the page. This makes a lot of sense to say, like we said, that kofar applies in the world of regel, where an animal kills a person by accident. If you wanted to say that there is no kofar by regel, and perhaps v'tanamini zaken de regel, we were only talking about not murder, but the damages of regel, ma'asila, that won't work as we said above, because lifroch mal nizaken de regel sheken yeshnon beregel. Nizaken de regel and regular regel don't have the same din. Elalav shmami nami kofar de regel ma'asila. What we therefore see is, like we said earlier, that we learn kofar from the world of regel. Alma ika kofar beregel shmamina. We therefore see that the din of kofar applies in regards to a murder that takes place by an animal's regel. The Gemara says, Adam muad la'olam. All of us at all times are considered to be muad. We do not have a mode of calm in regards to damages. Everything we do, we'll soon see there are limits. Everything we do is deemed to be mu'ad. Says the Gemara, bein shogeg, bein mezid. This is true whether your damages were by accident or on purpose. Bein er, bein yashen. It doesn't matter if you're awake or if you're asleep. Any damages that you generate, you're responsible for. The Mishnah adds a case, sima es ein chavero. Let's say that a person blinds his friend, v'shiver es hakelim, an odd 2 peas in a pod, because they're very far from one another. If I blind a person, God forbid, or if I break kalim, mishalem nezek shalem. The din is that I'm obligated to pay nezek shalem. The Gemara picks up on this right away. Katani, what did we just learn? We learned sima es ein chavero, that if one man blinds his friend, that's dumya de shiver es hakelim. That's similar to breaking kalim. And what does the Gemara mean to teach us with this juxtaposition? Mahasam nezek in arba advarim lo. Just like by the shiver es hakelim, we only pay nezek and not arba advarim. Af sima es ein chavero nezek in arba advarim lo. There is no case scenario where if you blind someone that you would end up paying more than just the nezek, you do not pay the arba dvarim. That is what is learned from the juxtaposition. That brings us to the top of Chav Bava Amud Beis, asking the question of Minahani Mili. How do we know this? How do we know what? Thanks to Rashi, top of the page, Minahani Mili de nezek chayev afilu b'shogeg. We had said in our Mishnah that Adam is muad la'olam. Why is it that I'd be chayev in nezek shaleh, that I'd be chayev to pay damages? Afilu b'shogeg, says the Gemara on the top line of Chav Bava Amud Beis. Amar Chizkiya b'chein Tana debei Chizkiya. He said it himself, and his yeshiva said it. Amar Kra petza tachas patza. We're not going to get into why it is this way, but the limit of this pasuk is l'chayvo al hashogeg kemezid v'al haones kiratzon. We learn from the pasuk of petza tachas patza that an adam is muad la'olam, and he'll be chayev by an accidental damage, just like intentional damage, and he'll be chayev on ones, just like ratzon. Says the Gemara, no, You can't say that drasha from those words because 3-4 lines down in Cain, Haimi Baile Litain Tsar b'makom nezek. No, the pasuk of Petza Tachas Patza is there to teach us another din, is that one has to pay tsar in certain cases of nezek. In the Rishonim here as to what this case is talking about. Nevertheless, the pasuk that's trying to teach us that I, as a human being, am muad even b'shogeg, no longer has a mara makom. So says the Gemara, that's not correct. In Cain, had it been what you were saying, that the reason for the pasuk of petza tachas patza was to teach me of litein sar b'makom nezek, if that were to have been true, then lichtov kra petza b'petza. My tachas petza. What's the extra word of tachas? Shma mino tarte. So now, from the pasuk of petza tachas patza, we learn two things. We learn l'chayvo al shogeg kemezid ve'al ones keratzon, that an adam is muad la'olam, no matter what, bein shogeg, bein mezid, bein ones, bein ratzon, and we learn that from petza tachas patza. And we also learn one other thing from petza tachas patza, and that is litein sa'ar b'makom nezek, that when a person is getting paid for damages, we also have to pay for their tsar. Now the Gemara gets into the scope and limits of Adam Muad La'olam. Fascinating piece of Gemara. The rest of today's Gemara is particularly easy, minus the emotionally graphic part at the end. So the Gemara gives a case scenario on Chavav Amud Beis. Amar Rabba Haisa Eben Munachas La B'Cheko. Let's say you're sitting down. You don't realize it, but your kid put a rock on your lap. You didn't even know it was there. You're spaced out. You didn't even notice. V'lo hikirba. So you're sitting there with a rock. You're sitting on in the bleachers, and when you stand up, something falls. The amad v'nafla. So, le'inyan nizakin, in regards to damages, what's the din? Chayev. Why? Adamu ad la'olam. Le'inyan arba dvarim pater. But when it comes to arba dvarim, I'm going to be pater for the nezek because I had no idea what was going on. Le'inyan Shabbos, in regards to the violations of Shabbos, let's say this rock is a perfect sphere and it rolls Dalet Amos, Rishus Harabim, or crosses the threshold from Rishus Hayachid to Rishus Harabim, or vice versa. By Shabbos, you're pater because Meleches Machshavas Asra Torah. There needs to be intent when we violate Shabbos. Le'inyan Galus, if that rock accidentally kills someone, do I have to go into Galus pater because I literally didn't even know that I had a rock in my lap? That's not shogeg, that's ones. Le'inyan Eved, when it comes to an Eved, because we know the din of an Eved, if I injure my Eved in such a way where a tooth falls out or an eye falls out, he goes free. This is plukta de Rashbag v'Rabbanon. This is actually a machlokes between Rashbag and Rabbanon. If in a case of the rock that falls out of my lap, when I didn't even know that there was a rock in my lap, if I injure an Eved in a way where typically he would have otherwise gone free, this is a machlokes de Tanya, 12 lines down. Let's say that there's an Eved and I'm the Rabbo and I'm the master. And he says to me, my Eved says to me, V'amar lo k'chol eini. Can you do me a favor? Put on this salve on my eye, put on this makeup in my eye, and inadvertently, Vesima, I, the master, blinded my own Eved. Or, Chasur lishini, please dig around my teeth. I have some pain in my teeth. Let's just say the dentists of old are not like the dentists of today. They didn't know what they were doing relative to our knowledge. So it says the Gemara that vihipila. So I'm the master, and I'm doing a little bit of dental work on my Eved. His tooth falls out. Sichek be'adon, he laughs at his master v'yatza l'cherus. That's the Tanakama, that he goes free. But he didn't intend on doing this. So that means it seems to be that according to the Tanakama, the Rabbanon, it seems to be that even with an accident, you're going to go free. Rashbag Omer v'shichasa ad sheyiskaben l'shachasa. No, that when it comes to an Eved, there needs to be intent. So the machlokes between the Rashbag and the Rabbanan in regards to our case would be as follows. I'm sitting down. My child puts a rock in my lap. I didn't even realize it. I stand up and then the rock falls down and hits the mouth of my Eved and a tooth falls out. He smiles with a gaping hole in his front teeth, gushing blood, thinking he gets to go free now. Machlokes, Rashbag, and the Rabbanan, not so pasha. All of that is iteration 1 of our case of the child putting a rock in the lap of the parent. Here's iteration 2, 1/3 of the way down. Chavav Amud Beis. Hikir ba v'shichecha. Let's say that I knew the rock was there, but I was engrossed in conversation, v'shichecha, and I forgot, and then v'amad v'nafla. Oh, so now everything changes. Well, not everything. Le'inyan nizak and chayev, because your adam is muad la'olam. Le'inyan dalad dvarim pater, because you didn't intend on doing it. Le'inyan galus, here things change. There you're chayev. The pasuk says by going into galus for killing someone bishogeg, it has the language of bishgaga, and therefore you had yediyah yediyah. Because you knew about it, you're therefore held accountable, and therefore you're obligated to go into galus if you kill. Le'inyan Shabbos, you're still pater because meleches machshevas amarachmana, and you didn't plan on doing anything wrong. Le'inyan eved plukta, the Rashbag v'Rabbanan, same as before, where the Rabbanan say that he goes free, and the Rashbag says he does not go free. Now, here's iteration number 3 of our case. The rock is put in my lap, and I knew it was there, and I stood up with intent. Niskaven lizrok shtayim, I wanted to throw it only 2 amos, the zarak arba, and it went 4. So now, I knew it was there, it wasn't bishogeg, I threw it, but I only intended on throwing it 2, but it went 4. So then, le'inyin nizakin as well, you're of course going to be chayev. Le'inyin dalad dvarim pater, because you didn't do what you intended. Le'inyin Shabbos meleches machsheves ba'inan, we're halfway down on Chavav Amud Beis. In regards to Shabbos, we have meleches machsheves. Le'inyin galus, this is a machlokas as to what this means. Le'inyin galus, in regards to galus, let's say that I threw the rock 2, but intended to throw 4. When it landed at 2, it killed somebody. So by accident. So the Gemara says, by le'inyan galus, it says, asher lo tzada amarachmana, prat leniskaven lizrok shtayim v'zarak dalet, to exclude the case of someone who threw 2 instead of 4. But we don't know which way they're excluding. Are you excluding from galus? Or are you saying they have to go to galus? That's a machlokas over here. Le'inyan eved, and in regards to eved, because you only intended to throw 2 and you threw 4, if you then broke the tooth of your eved, and again, that toothless smile, there, pluk to the Rashbag v'Rabbanan, where the Rashbag is mekil and says that the eved does not go free because it wasn't your intention. You intended to throw 4. He was sitting at the 2-yard line. I planned on throwing 4. The Rabbanon, they were the ones who let him go. Here is iteration number 4 of the case of the rock in my lap. Niskaven lizrok arba v'zarak shmona. I intended on throwing 4, but not 8. Now let's go through all the cases yet again, 2/3 of the way down. Le'inyan nizakin chayev, because Adam is mu'al le'olam. Le'inyan dal dvarim pater, because that's not what you intended to do. Le'inyan Shabbos, it depends. Shabbos, we know that arba amos is the minimum threshold when a person is b'reshus harabim, a reshus harabim deoraisa, not where we live today. All of our reshuyos, by and large, it's very rare to find the reshus harabim deoraisa. So here the Gemara says, le'inyan Shabbos, it depends. Be'omer, if I, who is the owner of the rock, if I say, Kol makom shetirtze tanuach, I don't care where the rock lands, then yes, I violated Shabbos. Ilolo, but if I really only wanted it to land in a specific spot, then that's not the case. Lenyan galus, we have the same issue as before. We don't know exactly what the drasha means. Lenyan galus, what if I threw it 4 but intended on going 8, and when I threw it to the 4 mark, it killed someone by accident? The pasuk says, Asher lo tzada prat leniskaven lizrok arba v'zarak shmona. And again, machlokas in the Rishonim as to whether or not this person goes to galus or not. We don't know what this drasha means. And then Eved pluked the Rashbag v'Rabbanan yet again, because we don't know who we hold like. According to the Rashbag, the Eved would not go free if the rock hit him in the face at the 4 amos line, because that wasn't the intent of the Bible. And the Rabbanan would say he does go free. Okay, new case. We're 10 lines from the bottom, almost done for the day. Quick daf for today, relatively speaking. It's all relative in Bava Kama. V'amar Rabba, Zara Kli Me Rosh Hagag. This case we saw earlier. We saw this about 10 days ago on Yud Zayin Amud Beis. If somebody drops a Kli, Zara Kli Me Rosh Hagag, well, we should assume instantly that gravity will do its thing and it's going to break. But before it hit the ground, I'm watching you throw, you're angry at someone, you take something special of theirs that's made out of glass and you throw it off the roof. So I'm like, hey, this is great batting practice. I take my bat, right when it gets to my sweet spot of my swing, I swing. So I break what you dropped while it's on its way down. Gravity's doing its thing. It's going to break with or without me batting, but still I batted and shattered that piece of glass into 1,000 pieces. Putter. My timer. What is the reason why I, who swung my bat at your item, is putter? Because mana tvira tavar, same line as we saw in Yud Zayin, you broke a kli that was already broken. Namely, from the moment that I released that kli 100 feet off the ground, the second I release it, it is halachically deemed broken. So therefore, when I swing at it when it's 3 feet off the ground, it's mana tvira tavar. You're breaking something that's already broken. The Gemara changes the case. V'amar Rabba, Zara Kli Me Rosh Hagag. Let's say that I let go of the Kli 100 feet off the ground. When I did that, at that moment, underneath was pillows and blankets and air mattresses. The kli wouldn't break under the circumstances. And either you or I move the cushions out of the way. So here's our flow of events. I let go of the glass while there are pillows underneath. After the release, I or you pull away the pillows from underneath. So what's the din in such a case? The din is, I lost my spot, putter. Why are you putter in that case? Because my taima, beidnan deshaje psuke mifsake gire. The reason you're putter is because the person. What happened over here? Beidnan deshaje, when you let go psuke mifsake gire, because we know that it's not going to break. The arrows of stat, we should assume that nothing's going to happen to this at all. It's going to be totally fine. So that's why under those circumstances, you should be putter, because you made a decision afterwards. When I originally dropped it, it was supposed to be perfectly fine. There were pillows there. You moved the pillows. Okay, but I should be putter because my action was dramatic, granted, but it was not halachically asr. And the last two cases are the graphic ones. V'amar Rabba, Zarak Tinok Merosh Agag. Rahmana litzlan 1,000 times over, sounds like our enemies. A child is dropped from a roof. Uba'acher v'kiblo b'sayif. And before the child can hit the ground, he unfortunately falls on a knife that another person is carrying, a sword. This is plukta de Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira v'Rabbanan. This is a machlokas tanoim. Titania, 2 lines from the bottom on Chavav Amud Beis. We learned this case earlier as well. Where was this? This was on Daf Yod. Hikuhu asara b'nei adam be'asara maklos. Let's say that 10 people are beating one person. Bein bevasachas bein bezeachar zeh, whether or not it is sequential hits or concurrent hits, kulan peturin, all of them are patur, because we don't know who did the actual killing. Everybody donated to the killing, so we have no idea who was involved. That would be the case of patur. In our case of the baby falling off the roof and landing on the knife, we don't know who caused what. They both did things that were deadly. On the top of Chav Zayin Amar Aleph, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Omer, no. B'zeachar zeh, in a case of zeachar zeh, this is referring to the Brisa, where there were 10 men who beat a person. If they beat this person with sequential hits, person 1 hits, then 2, 3 through 10, and then back around again. Ha'acharon chayev. The person who hits him, whereupon he dies, that last hit, that last person who did that last hit is chayev, mipnei shekirev misaso. And therefore, says the Gemara in the name of Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, applying his din, his logic to our case, the person holding the knife was mekarev misaso because he died. The baby died a couple feet off the ground instead of on the ground. Therefore, that person is chayev machlokes tanaim. Let's say the baby was Rahmana litzlan, thrown off the roof, and ba shor bekiblo bekarnav, and a shor, Rashi points out it was a shor hamuad. He gores the baby on his way down. Here too, plukta de Rabbi Shmuel ben, different people, but plukta de Rabbi Shmuel ben Osher of Yochanan ben Beroka v'Rabbanan. Rabbi Shmuel and the Rabbanan argue the Tanya, and with this brisa we will close. V'nasan pidyon nafsho. They say you have to pay the value of the nefesh, but we don't know whose nefesh you're talking about. If it's demei nizak, so then the baby's life is currently worthless because the assumption once he was let go from the roof is that he would die. He has no erech, so then he's not chayiv to pay anything. Rabbi Shmuel ben Osher Yochanan Meroka says, no, Omer demei mazik. No, it's the mazik. It's the one who let him go. Therefore, there is value. Therefore, he would be chayiv to pay. We're going to stop right here at this new case of Amar Rabba. We will stop right here and pick up tomorrow night with Chav Zayin Amar Aleph. Wishing you all a beautiful night.
Okay, so